Over the shimmering turquoise waters of the West Philippine Sea, a tense and high-stakes standoff unfolds, watched by the world and fraught with uncertainty. A battered Philippine supply boat, weathered by years of service and the relentless sea, inches forward toward the grounded BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting warship that has become a powerful symbol of Philippine sovereignty on the contested Ayungin Shoal. Suddenly, massive Chinese Coast Guard ships loom on the horizon, their white hulls gleaming and their horns blaring a clear, thunderous warning: turn back or face the consequences. But the Filipino crew refuses to be cowed. With steely determination they press on, braving the waves and the threat of confrontation to deliver vital supplies, food, water, and hope to the Marines stationed on the isolated rusting warship. The Chinese vessels close in, maneuvering with calculated precision, cutting across the boat's path in a dangerous maritime dance that could turn deadly at any moment. Suddenly, a powerful water cannon erupts from a Chinese ship, slamming into the small Philippine boat. The force of the water rocks the vessel, a show of force meant to intimidate and send a message: you are not welcome here. This is a modern David and Goliath, one side wielding overwhelming power and advanced technology, the other armed only with courage, resolve, and the will to stand their ground. No shots are fired, but the aggression is unmistakable. The tension crackles in the salty air as each side tests the other's limits, knowing that a single misstep could spark a wider conflict. Yet the real battle here is not just for territory, but for the rule of international law, for the right of a nation, no matter how small, to control its own destiny and protect its people. For the Philippines, retreat would mean conceding sovereignty and emboldening further aggression, but fighting back militarily would be suicide against a far superior force. Instead, a new strategy emerges, one that relies not on firepower but on visibility, diplomacy, and the power of public opinion. Grainy videos filmed by the crew quickly go viral, transforming what was once a remote and little-known dispute into a global drama, drawing the attention of the international community. The world now sees the Filipino flag flying defiantly atop the battered warship, a vivid symbol of resistance and national pride, standing tall against overwhelming odds and Chinese might. These powerful images tell a story of courage and resilience, setting the stage for a new kind of battle, one fought not with weapons but with laws, alliances, and the unbreakable spirit of a nation determined to defend its future. The standoff at Ayungin Shoal is just the beginning, a single chapter in a much larger fight for justice, sovereignty, and the right to chart one's own course in the turbulent waters of the South China Sea. To truly grasp the roots of this conflict, you have to start with the map, specifically, the bold, sweeping curve known as China's 9-dash line. This line isn't just a border, it's a statement, a claim that stretches across the heart of the South China Sea. China's sweeping claim covers nearly 90% of the South China Sea, overlapping the Philippines' internationally recognized Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. This overlap isn't just a technicality, it's a direct challenge to international law and the sovereignty of neighboring countries. For Manila, this dispute is far from abstract. It's about the daily lives of millions, about food on the table, energy for homes and industries, and the future security of the nation's coastal communities. The West Philippine Sea is not only rich in fish, which sustains local fishermen, but is also believed to hold vast, untapped oil and gas reserves, resources that could transform the Philippine economy and secure its energy future. But China's expansive claim threatens these livelihoods and undermines national security, sparking protests and growing anxiety among Filipinos. Escalating tensions further, China began building artificial islands in 2013, transforming once pristine reefs into sprawling military outposts complete with airstrips and radar installations. Bases like Mischief Reef, located deep within the Philippine EEZ, now bristle with runways, warships, and advanced military hardware, projecting power far from China's shores. The Philippines, with its outdated military equipment and limited resources, finds itself unable to match China's growing might or respond effectively to these new threats. Any direct confrontation at sea would be disastrous, risking escalation into a wider conflict that no one wants. Instead, China's strategy is to create new facts on the water, enforcing its claims with Coast Guard ships and maritime militia, building new installations, and steadily tightening its grip, all while avoiding open war. Filipino fishermen face daily harassment, their access to traditional fishing grounds restricted, and the nation's sovereignty slowly eroded, one encounter at a time. In this new era of maritime contest, the Philippines urgently needs a new kind of defense, one that can protect its people, its resources, and its future in these contested waters. Lacking warships, the Philippines turned to the law. In 2013, Manila challenged China's 9-dash line at an international tribunal under UNCLOS. China refused to participate, dismissing the case, but the proceedings continued, with the Philippines assembling a top legal team. Their argument: China's historical claims have no basis under international law. UNCLOS defines maritime rights, not old maps. The case also asked the tribunal to clarify the status of disputed features. Are they islands, rocks, or just low-tide elevations? The answer would determine if China's claims held any legal water. The world watched. Could a small nation use law to hold a superpower accountable? For 3 years, evidence was presented: ancient maps, geological surveys, and testimony from displaced fishermen. It was a quiet, determined fight for justice. The stakes were nothing less than the future of the rules-based order. On July 12, 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague delivered its long-awaited verdict, a sweeping and historic victory for the Philippines. The atmosphere in Manila was electric, as crowds poured into the streets, waving flags and celebrating a moment many saw as a turning point in the nation's history. The tribunal declared China's expansive 9-dash line claim illegal under international law, making headlines around the world. For years, this line had been used by China to assert control over nearly the entire South China Sea, but now, the world had a clear legal judgment. The judges found no credible evidence that China had exclusive historical rights or control over these contested waters. The decision was based on careful examination of historical records and legal arguments from both sides. Furthermore, the tribunal ruled that none of the Spratly Islands, regardless of size or development, could generate an exclusive economic zone. This meant that the vast resources in these waters could not be claimed solely by building on or occupying these features. China's massive island-building campaign was also condemned. The tribunal found that these activities had caused severe and irreparable damage to the marine environment, destroying coral reefs and threatening the region's biodiversity. The ruling went further, stating that China had violated the Philippines' sovereign rights by blocking Filipino fishermen, interfering with oil exploration, and harassing vessels in areas that rightfully belonged to the Philippines under international law. Beijing, however, immediately rejected the ruling, dismissing it as waste paper. Chinese officials insisted they would not recognize the verdict, and their activities in the disputed waters continued unabated. On the surface, little seemed to change. China still maintained its military bases and Navy ships across the South China Sea, projecting power and control. Yet, the legal victory gave the Philippines newfound international legitimacy and moral authority. The world now recognized the Philippines' position as grounded in law, not just politics. The dispute, once shrouded in ambiguity, was now clarified. A clear violation of international law had been established, setting a precedent for future maritime disputes. The ruling became the cornerstone for a new diplomatic and legal strategy, empowering the Philippines to engage the world and defend its rights with renewed confidence. The international community now had a legal anchor to rally around, strengthening calls for a rules-based order in the South China Sea and beyond. Armed with the tribunal ruling, the Philippines built a coalition of support. Diplomats urged nations to recognize the verdict and defend the rules-based order. The U.S.-Philippine alliance was revitalized, with expanded joint military exercises and explicit defense commitments. New partnerships formed with Australia, Japan, and others, bringing modern patrol vessels and joint training. Freedom of navigation operations by allies signaled global backing. When China acted aggressively, it faced not just Manila, but a chorus of international condemnation. The G7 and other nations upheld the ruling, isolating China diplomatically. The Philippines turned a bilateral dispute into a global test of international law. China's actions now carried a higher reputational cost. The fight for the West Philippine Sea became a national cause. Fishermen recorded confrontations, videos went viral, fueling outrage and unity. The government embedded journalists on patrols, providing undeniable evidence of China's aggression. Social media campaigns and the hashtag Atenang West Philippine Sea rallied the public. The BRP Sierra Madre became a symbol of resilience, its Marines national heroes. Public support gave leaders the resolve to stand firm. The struggle for sovereignty became part of Filipino identity. The Philippines' story is a lesson for the 21st century. Strength isn't just about military might, it's about law, alliances, and unity. The legal victory set a precedent for other nations facing powerful neighbors. Assertive transparency and public mobilization countered disinformation and intimidation. Focused military modernization created credible defense without provoking war. The greatest asset, the people's will to resist and belief in their cause. The Philippines proved that even a David can outsmart a Goliath by making the law mightier than force.